The sound of champagne glasses clinking and laughter echoed through the marble foyer of Oceanview Terrace, but none of it was meant for me. I stood frozen in the entrance, my emerald silk dress suddenly feeling like a costume I had no right to wear. The hostess's apologetic smile told me everything I needed to know before she even opened her mouth. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. I'm so sorry, Mrs. Chen, but there's no reservation under your name tonight. The private dining room was specifically booked for the Chen family celebration, and we were given strict instructions that no additional guests would be seated. Her voice carried that particular Miami hospitality mixed with uncomfortable authority. The humid Miami evening air pressed against my skin as I processed what was happening. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the restaurant, I could see them clearly. The Chen family gathered around their usual corner table, overlooking Biscayne Bay. David sat at the head of the table, his perfectly styled black hair catching the candlelight, while his mother Margaret held court with her usual regal bearing. His father Robert was absorbed in his phone, probably checking stock prices even during family dinner. Stephanie, David's sister, gestured animatedly with her wine glass, her designer jewelry catching the light with every movement. And there, in the seat that should have been mine, sat Ashley Brooks. She looked radiant in a white cocktail dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Her blonde hair swept into an elegant updo that showcased the diamond earrings I'd never seen before. She laughed at something Margaret said, touching David's arm with a familiarity that made my stomach clench. They looked like a complete family unit, polished and perfect, with absolutely no space for me. "Ma'am, are you feeling all right?" The hostess's concerned voice broke through my paralysis. "Can I get you some water?" I managed to shake my head, though my throat felt like sandpaper. "Could you please double-check?" "Emma Rodriguez, Chen." My husband David specifically told me about tonight's celebration. He said it was important that I be here. The hostess's fingers moved across her tablet with practiced efficiency. "I do see a reservation for Chen, party of 6. But there's a very specific note here." She lowered her voice, glancing around nervously. "It says, family only, no exceptions, no additional guests, regardless of relation or request." The words hit me like a physical blow. Family only. After 8 years of marriage, after building a life together, after supporting David through his struggles with his father's expectations and his mother's constant criticism, I was not considered family. "Emma?" A familiar voice called from behind me. I turned to see Ashley Brooks approaching, having apparently excused herself from the table. Up close, she was even more stunning than I'd realized, with the kind of effortless beauty that came from good genetics and better cosmetic work. Her smile was perfectly practiced, the kind that looked warm but never quite reached her eyes. "Ashley," I managed, trying to keep my voice steady, "I wasn't expecting to see you here." "Oh, you know how these Chen family gatherings are," she said with a light laugh, waving her hand dismissively. "Margaret insisted I join them tonight. Something about discussing the future of the family business." She paused, tilting her head with mock concern. "I'm surprised David didn't mention it to you, but then again, these conversations tend to be pretty boring for outsiders." "Outsider," the word hung in the air between us like a toxic cloud. "I'm hardly an outsider," I said, fighting to keep my composure. "I'm David's wife." Ashley's smile widened, but it was sharp now, predatory. "Are you though? I mean really." She glanced back toward the table where David was deep in conversation with his father, completely oblivious to our exchange, "because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're yesterday's trash, and I'm tomorrow's treasure." The casual cruelty of her words left me speechless. She'd delivered the insult with the same tone someone might use to comment on the weather, as if my complete humiliation was just another topic of polite conversation. "David loves me," I said, weakly, hating how pathetic the words sounded even as they left my mouth. "David loves the idea of you," Ashley corrected, her voice taking on a patient, almost educational tone. "The sweet girl who supported him when he was nobody. The loyal wife who stood by him through all his family drama. But sweetie, that was 8 years ago. He needs someone who can match his current lifestyle, someone who understands the world he's moving into. She gestured toward herself with a graceful sweep of her hand. Someone like me, third-generation Miami, socialite, Wharton MBA, family connections that actually matter in this city. I'm not a charity case. He married when he was young and idealistic. My cheeks burned with embarrassment and rage. You don't know anything about our marriage. I know enough, Ashley replied smoothly. I know that David's been staying at my penthouse in Brickell 3 nights a week for the past 6 months. I know that he's been introducing me to his business associates as his partner without specifying what kind of partner. And I know that tonight, when Margaret asked him to bring the woman he sees a future with, he chose me. The ground felt unsteady beneath my feet. 6 months. All those late nights he'd claimed to be working on the new resort development in Key Biscayne. All those weekend business trips to Orlando and Tampa. All those times he'd been distant and distracted when he came home. It had been going on for 6 months. I also know, Ashley continued, her voice dropping to a whisper, about the estate planning meeting scheduled for next week, about the changes David wants to make to ensure his inheritance is protected, about the prenup that's looking pretty outdated these days. My blood ran cold. The prenup we'd signed 8 years ago was a simple document, created when David was still struggling to prove himself to his father and I was a digital marketing consultant with more ambition than assets. It had seemed like a formality then, a way to appease Robert's concerns about Gold Digger. Neither of us had anticipated that my father's small tech startup would explode into a multi-million-dollar acquisition, just 2 years later, leaving me with a trust fund that dwarfed even the Chen family's considerable wealth. You're talking about my money, I said, the pieces finally clicking into place. Ashley's laugh was like crystal breaking. Oh honey, that's where you're wrong. I'm talking about our money. David's and mine, the money that will fund our future together, our children's educations, our life as Miami's next power couple. She leaned closer, her perfume overwhelming in its intensity. Your little tech inheritance was cute when you were playing house, but now it's time for the adults to take over. That inheritance is mine, I said, my voice stronger now. It's protected by law, by my father's will, by trusts that David has no legal claim to. Legal claim, Ashley's eyebrows arched in amusement. Who said anything about legal claims? David is your husband and when you die, he inherits everything. And when he dies, well, let's just say I'll be the grieving widow who carries on his legacy. The casual way she discussed my death sent ice through my veins. Are you threatening me? Threatening? Ashley looked genuinely shocked. Oh, sweetheart, no. I'm just explaining reality. You're what, 32, 33, young, and healthy, sure, but Miami is such a dangerous city. All those boat accidents on the bay, all those hit and runs on the causeway, all those unfortunate incidents that happen to people who don't pay attention to their surroundings. She shrugged delicately. I'm just saying, it would be such a shame if something happened to you before you had a chance to update your will to reflect your new circumstances. I stared at her, finally understanding the full scope of what I was dealing with. This wasn't just an affair. This wasn't just a marriage in crisis. This was a calculated plan to eliminate me and claim my fortune, dressed up in designer clothing, and delivered with a smile. You're insane, I whispered. I'm practical, Ashley corrected. And I'm patient. I've been cultivating my relationship with the Chen family for over a year now. Margaret adores me. Robert thinks I'm the perfect addition to the family business. Stephanie considers me her best friend. Even Kevin, sweet little Kevin, trusts me completely. She ticked off each family member like items on a shopping list. The only person standing between me and everything I want is you. Through the restaurant windows I could see David raising his glass in a toast, his face animated with joy. Margaret was beaming at him with proud maternal affection. Robert was actually smiling, which was rarer than a Miami snowstorm. They looked like a family celebrating something wonderful, something they'd all been waiting for. "What are they toasting?" I asked, though I dreaded the answer. Ashley's smile was triumphant. David's promotion to CEO of Chen Industries, Robert's finally stepping down, and Margaret convinced him that David is ready to take over the family empire. She paused dramatically. Of course, they wanted to make sure he had the right support system in place, the right partner to help him navigate the challenges ahead, and they think that partner is you. "They know it's me," Ashley said confidently. "I've been attending board meetings as David's advisor for the past 3 months. I've been the one helping him develop the new resort concept that's going to revolutionize luxury hospitality in South Florida. I've been the one networking with investors and city officials to secure the permits and funding." She smiled at me with pity. "Tell me, Emma, when was the last time David asked for your input on anything important? When was the last time he brought you to a business function? When was the last time he treated you like a partner instead of a roommate?" The questions hit home with devastating accuracy. I couldn't remember the last time David had asked my opinion on anything beyond what to order for dinner. He'd stopped telling me about his work challenges months ago, stopped sharing his dreams and fears the way he used to. I'd attributed it to the stress of his new responsibilities, to the pressure of living up to his father's expectations. I'd been understanding, supportive, patient. I'd been a fool. "So what happens now?" I asked, my voice barely audible. Ashley glanced at her watch, a delicate Cartier piece that probably cost more than most people's cars. "Now I go back to my family dinner and continue being the perfect future daughter-in-law. Next week, David files for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences. Your prenup ensures a clean split of assets acquired during marriage, but your inheritance remains yours." She paused, her expression turning predatory again. "For now, and then you have an accident, a tragic, unavoidable accident that leaves David devastated and wealthy. He'll need comfort, support, someone to help him through his grief. Naturally, I'll be there for him. We'll marry after a respectful mourning period, maybe a year or two, and then I'll have everything I've ever wanted." The casual, matter-of-fact way she outlined my murder made me feel like I was trapped in a nightmare. This couldn't be real. People didn't actually plan these things, didn't discuss them over champagne and candlelight in 5-star restaurants overlooking the bay. "You won't get away with this," I said, though my voice lacked conviction. "Oh, but I will," Ashley replied with absolute certainty, "because I'm smarter than you, Emma. I'm more ruthless than you. I'm more connected than you. And most importantly, I'm more motivated than you." She reached into her purse and pulled out a small digital recorder, pressing play for just a moment. My own voice emerged from the tiny speaker, crystal clear. "That inheritance is mine. It's protected by law, by my father's will, by trusts that David has no legal claim to." My blood turned to ice. "You were recording me?" "Insurance," Ashley said simply, slipping the device back into her purse, "in case you get any ideas about warning David or going to the police. This little recording makes it sound like you're obsessed with your money, paranoid about people trying to steal it. If something unfortunate happens to you, well, it'll just confirm what everyone already suspects, that you were an unstable woman who couldn't handle losing her husband to a better woman." She was right. Played out of context, that recording would make me sound exactly like a jealous, money-obsessed wife spiraling out of control. No one would believe the truth about her threats, her casual discussion of my murder, her calculated plan to inherit my fortune. "I have to go," Ashley said, smoothing down her dress. "David will be wondering where I am, and I promised Margaret I'd tell her about the new yacht I'm considering purchasing. Something about celebrating new beginnings." She smiled at me one last time, cold and victorious. "Enjoy the rest of your evening, Emma. And remember, Miami can be such a dangerous city for people who aren't careful." With that, she turned and walked back toward the Chen family table, her heels clicking confidently on the marble floor. I watched her slide back into her seat beside David, saw him smile at her with genuine warmth, saw her lean over to whisper something in his ear that made him laugh. She fit perfectly into their world, polished and poised and predatory. I stood there for another moment, invisible and forgotten, before turning and walking back out into the humid Miami night. The valet brought my car, a modest Honda Civic that looked embarrassingly plain next to the Porsches and Bentleys, lined up in the restaurant's parking area. As I drove through the neon-lit streets of downtown Miami, past the gleaming high-rises and luxury hotels, I felt like a ghost haunting my own life. My phone buzzed with a text from David. "Working late again tonight, don't wait up. Love you, love you." The words that had once filled me with warmth now felt like mockery. How long had he been lying to me? How long had he been planning this betrayal? How long had I been living in a fantasy while he built a real life with someone else? I pulled into the driveway of our house in Coral Gables, the Spanish-style mansion that had been my dream home when we'd bought it 5 years ago. Now it felt like a mausoleum, beautiful, and empty and cold. The house was dark except for the security lights, and I realized I couldn't remember the last time David and I had spent an evening here together, just the two of us. Inside, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat in the living room, staring at the family photos that lined the mantelpiece. David and me on our wedding day, both of us glowing with happiness and hope. David and me at various Chen family gatherings, me always slightly on the periphery, always trying to fit in. David and me on vacation in the Bahamas, back when he still looked at me like I was the most important person in his world. When had that changed? When had I become yesterday's trash? My phone rang, startling me from my thoughts. The caller ID showed my best friend Maria Santos, and I answered gratefully. "Emma, I just heard the most ridiculous rumor, and I need you to tell me it's not true." Maria's voice was tight with concern. "Someone told me they saw David at Oceanview Terrace tonight, with some blonde woman, and that you weren't there. Please tell me this person was mistaken." I found myself laughing, a sound that bordered on hysteria. "Oh, it's true. It's all true. Maria, my husband is cheating on me with a woman who just told me she's planning to kill me and inherit my fortune." The silence on the other end of the line stretched for so long I thought the call had dropped. Finally, Maria spoke, her voice deadly serious. "Emma, I need you to listen to me very carefully. Pack a bag right now. Come to the restaurant. We're going to figure this out together." "I can't prove anything," I said, exhaustion weighing down every word. She was smart. She recorded me. She's been planning this for months. She has the whole family on her side. "Emma," Maria said firmly, "you're forgetting something very important. You're not just Emma Rodriguez Chen, the abandoned wife. You're Emma Rodriguez, daughter of Miguel Rodriguez, the man who built one of the most successful tech companies in South Florida history. You're brilliant, you're resourceful, and you're a hell of a lot stronger than you realize." Her words sparked something in me, a tiny flame of determination that I'd thought was completely extinguished. "You think I can fight this? I think you can destroy them," Maria said with absolute conviction. "But first, you need to get out of that house and somewhere safe. Can you do that for me?" I looked around the living room one more time, at the photos and memories of a life that had apparently been a lie. "Yes," I said, surprised by the strength in my own voice. "I can do that." "Good, and Emma, tomorrow we're going to start fighting back. Ashley Brooks has no idea what she's just unleashed." As I hung up the phone and went upstairs to pack, I felt something shifting inside me. The devastation and humiliation were still there, but underneath them was something harder, more dangerous. Ashley had made one crucial mistake in her perfect plan. She'd underestimated me. She'd seen a victim where she should have seen a threat. She'd called me yesterday's trash, dismissed me as an obstacle to be eliminated. But she was about to learn that some trash is toxic when you try to dispose of it carelessly, and I was about to become the most dangerous kind of waste she'd ever encountered. The game was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. Maria's Café Cabano had always been my sanctuary in Miami's chaotic energy, but tonight it felt like a war room. The small restaurant was closed to the public, its intimate lighting casting long shadows across the empty table. Maria had cleared her schedule and sent her staff home early, leaving just the two of us in the space that smelled of strong coffee and Cuban spices. "Start from the beginning," Maria said, setting down 2 cups of her signature cortado and a bottle of aged rum. "Tell me everything," Ashley said, word for word. I wrapped my hands around the warm ceramic mug, using its heat to steady my trembling fingers. She knew about the estate planning meeting next week. She knew about changes David wants to make to protect his inheritance. She knew details about our prenup that I've never discussed with anyone, except David. Maria's dark eyes flashed with anger. Someone's been feeding her information. The question is who? It has to be David, I said, though the words tasted bitter. Who else would have access to our private financial arrangements? Maybe, Maria said thoughtfully, but think about it. Why would David share those details with his mistress, unless he was planning something specific? And why would Ashley be so confident about inheriting your money, if she was just the other woman? I replayed the conversation in my mind, focusing on Ashley's exact words, rather than the emotional devastation they'd caused. She said she's been attending board meetings as David's advisor for 3 months. She's been helping him develop the new resort concept. She's been networking with investors and city officials. That's not pillow talk, Maria observed. That's business partnership. She's positioned herself as indispensable to David's professional success. The realization hit me like a physical blow.
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story.
She's not just stealing my husband, she's stealing his entire life and reconstructing it with herself at the center. Maria nodded grimly. And you're the only thing standing between her and complete control. The wealthy widow angle only works if there's actually a widow to play. She leaned forward, her expression intense. Emma, I need you to think carefully. Has David done anything unusual lately? Changed his routines, his passwords, his legal arrangements? I forced myself to focus, to think beyond the emotional betrayal, to the practical implications. He's been working late more often, but I thought it was because of the promotion. He's been taking calls in his office with the door closed, which he never used to do. And last month, he asked me to sign some papers that his accountant said were routine tax documents. What kind of paper? I don't know. I didn't read them carefully. David said it was just updating our beneficiary information for his company life insurance policy. The words left my mouth, and I immediately felt sick. Oh God, Maria, what if they weren't routine? Maria's expression turned thunderous. Where are those papers now? David's office. He has a file cabinet where he keeps all our important documents. We need to see those papers, Maria said decisively. Tonight. I shook my head. I can't go back there. What if David comes home? What if Ashley's with him? Then we'll wait until tomorrow when he's at work, Maria said. But Emma, we need to know what you signed. If Ashley's planning to kill you and claim your inheritance, she's going to need legal documentation to support her claim as David's grieving widow. The casual way she said it made me shiver. You really think she's serious about the murder part? Maria's laugh was harsh. Honey, I've lived in Miami my whole life. I've seen what people will do for a lot less money than what you're worth. And from what you've told me, Ashley Brooks sounds like the type who doesn't leave things to chance. She was right. Ashley had been too confident, too detailed in her planning. This wasn't a fantasy or a threat made in anger. This was a carefully constructed plan that had been months in the making. I need to call a lawyer, I said, reaching for my phone. Who? Maria asked. Your family lawyer probably has ties to David's family. Any divorce attorney you contact will have to disclose the consultation if David files first, which could tip him off that you're onto them. I felt trapped, surrounded by legal and financial implications I didn't fully understand. Then what do I do? Maria was quiet for a moment, her fingers drumming against the table. My cousin Jessica is a criminal defense attorney. She specializes in fraud and embezzlement cases. She's discreet, and she's tough as nails. Criminal defense, but I haven't committed any crime. No, but if Ashley's planning to kill you and steal your money, she's planning to commit several, and if David's involved, he's planning to help her. Maria pulled out her phone. Jessica owes me a favor. She'll see you tonight if I ask her to. While Maria made the call, I tried to process the magnitude of what I was facing. This morning I'd been a wife preparing for a family dinner, concerned about nothing more serious than choosing the right outfit. Now I was potentially the target of a murder plot, orchestrated by my husband and his mistress. She'll meet us at her office in an hour, Maria said, hanging up. But first, we need to document everything. Every conversation, every detail you remember, Every piece of evidence we can gather. For the next hour, we worked methodically. Maria took notes while I recounted every interaction I'd had with Ashley, every strange behavior I'd noticed from David, every family gathering where I'd felt excluded or dismissed. We created a timeline of David's relationship with Ashley, mapping his business trips and late nights against the progression of their affair. The pattern that emerged was chilling in its calculation. Ashley hadn't just seduced David. She'd systematically isolated him from me while integrating herself into his professional and family life. She'd positioned herself as the solution to his problems while making me appear to be the obstacle to his success. "Look at this," Maria said, pointing to our timeline. 6 months ago, David started staying out late. 5 months ago, he began asking you to sign papers. 4 months ago, he stopped talking to you about work. 3 months ago, Ashley started attending board meetings. 2 months ago, he moved his personal documents to a new safe deposit box that you don't have access to. I stared at the progression, seeing my marriage's destruction laid out in clinical detail. "He's been planning this for months." "They both have," Maria corrected. "This isn't a crime of passion or opportunity. This is premeditated fraud and conspiracy to commit murder." Jessica Taylor's law office occupied the top floor of a sleek building in Brickell, Miami's financial district. Even at 9 o'clock on a Friday night, the space buzzed with activity. Jessica herself was a woman in her 40s with steel gray hair and eyes that seemed to see through everything placed before her. "Maria filled me in on the basics," Jessica said, gesturing for us to sit across from her imposing desk. "But I need to hear the details from you. Start with tonight's conversation with Ashley Brooks." I repeated the story again, this time forcing myself to include every threat, every casual reference to my potential death, every detail about the inheritance plan. Jessica listened without interruption, occasionally making notes on a legal pad. "The recording she made," Jessica said when I finished. "That's actually good news." "Good news?" I couldn't hide my confusion. "It means she's worried about evidence. She's trying to create a record that supports her narrative, which suggests she doesn't have everything she needs to eliminate you safely." Jessica leaned back in her chair. "If she was confident in her plan, she wouldn't need insurance." "But she said the recording makes me sound paranoid and money-obsessed." "Out of context maybe, but in context it's evidence of her threats and your reasonable response to them." Jessica tapped her pen against her notepad. "The question is, what other evidence exists? Phone records, emails, financial documents, witness statements." I felt overwhelmed by the scope of the investigation. "I don't know where to start." "We start with what you have access to," Jessica said practically. "Your joint accounts, your shared devices, your home. We document everything before David realizes you're onto him." "Is that legal?" "It's your house, your computer, your bank accounts. You have every right to access your own information." Jessica's expression turned serious. "But Emma, once we start this process, there's no going back. If David and Ashley are planning what you think they're planning, confronting them directly could accelerate their timeline." The implication was clear. If I was right about the murder plot, investigating it could put me in immediate danger. "What's the alternative?" I pretend I don't know anything and wait for them to kill me. "No," Jessica said firmly. "We build a case, we gather evidence, we involve law enforcement, and we make sure you're protected throughout the process." "How?" "First, you don't go home tonight, or any night until we know more about their plans. Second, we establish a paper trail of your concerns. Third, we quietly gather evidence of their conspiracy. And fourth, we prepare for the possibility that they'll try to accelerate their timeline once they realize you're not the helpless victim they thought you were." Maria had been quiet throughout our conversation, but now she spoke up. "Emma, you need to understand something. The woman you described tonight isn't just planning to kill you, she's planning to destroy your entire legacy, your father's company, your family's memory, everything you've built. She's going to take your identity along with your money." The thought of Ashley wearing my jewelry, living in my house, spending my inheritance while playing the grieving widow made me feel sick, but it also made me angry, angrier than I'd ever been in my life. "What do we do first?" I asked. Jessica smiled, and for the first time since I'd met her, the expression was warm. "First, we make sure you're safe. I'm going to arrange for private security, someone who can watch your back while we investigate. Second, we access your financial records and see exactly what David's been up to. Third, We figure out who Ashley Brooks really is and what her real background looks like. You think she's lying about her credentials. I think anyone who casually discusses murder over dinner probably has some experience with deception, Jessica said dryly. People like Ashley don't just wake up one day and decide to become killers. They practice on smaller crimes first. Over the next 2 hours, Jessica walked me through the practical steps of protecting myself. We changed my passwords, moved my most liquid assets to accounts David couldn't access, and set up secure communication channels. She arranged for a private investigator to begin background checks on Ashley and to start surveillance on both her and David. The key, Jessica explained, is to gather intelligence without alerting them to what we're doing. We need to know their timeline, their methods, and their weaknesses before we make any moves. By the time we finished, it was nearly midnight. I felt exhausted but also strangely energized. For the first time since Ashley's threats, I felt like I had some control over my situation. "Where will you stay tonight?" Jessica asked as we prepared to leave. "She's staying with me," Maria said firmly. "I've got a guest room above the restaurant, and it's got its own entrance. David doesn't even know it exists." As we walked to Maria's car, I felt the weight of the evening settling over me. This morning I'd been Emma Rodriguez Chen, devoted wife and soon-to-be murder victim. Tonight I was Emma Rodriguez, woman with resources and allies and a plan to fight back. "Are you scared?" Maria asked as we drove through the quiet streets of Miami. I considered the question. Yes, but not the way I was earlier. Earlier I was scared because I felt powerless. Now I'm scared because I know how dangerous this is going to be. "Good," Maria's. "Fear will keep you alive, but so will anger. And Emma, I can see you're getting angry." She was right. The shock and devastation were fading, replaced by something harder and more focused. Ashley Brooks had made the mistake of assuming I was weak, that I would collapse under the weight of her threats, and David's betrayal. She'd underestimated me the same way the Chen family had always underestimated me. But I wasn't the same woman who'd stood helplessly in the restaurant earlier tonight. I was Miguel Rodriguez's daughter, and he'd built his empire by outmaneuvering people who thought they were smarter than him. I was Emma Rodriguez, and I'd inherited more than just his money. I'd inherited his intelligence, his determination, and his absolute refusal to let anyone take what was his. Ashley wanted to play games with my life and my fortune. She wanted to eliminate me and take my place. She thought she was dealing with yesterday's trash, something to be discarded and forgotten. She was about to learn that some trash is hazardous waste, and handling it carelessly can be fatal. The real game was just beginning, and this time, I was playing to win. The private investigator Jessica had recommended looked nothing like what I'd expected. Carlos Mendez was a soft-spoken man in his 50s with kind eyes and calloused hands, more like someone's favorite uncle than a professional spy. But when he spread the photographs and documents across Maria's kitchen table 3 days later, his findings revealed a level of deception that made my stomach turn. "Ashley Brooks doesn't exist," he said simply, pointing to a stack of official documents. "Or rather, she existed for exactly 18 months before she met your husband. Before that, she was Ashley Martinez, and she has a very interesting criminal history." I leaned forward, studying the mugshot of a woman who looked remarkably like the polished socialite I'd confronted at the restaurant. Same bone structure, same cold eyes, but this version had dark hair and a harder edge to her feature. "She was convicted of wire fraud in Nevada 5 years ago," Carlos continued, "posed as a financial advisor and convinced elderly clients to invest their life savings in non-existent real estate developments. She served 2 years in minimum security and was released with 3 years probation." "How did she become Ashley Brooks?" Maria asked, her voice tight with disgust. "Identity theft, but sophisticated. She targeted a real Ashley Brooks who died in a car accident in Colorado 3 years ago. No family, no close friends. Perfect cover for reinvention. Our Ashley obtained copies of the death certificate, social security card and other documents, then built an entire fictional history." Carlos flipped through more photographs, showing Ashley at various social events around Miami. She spent months establishing her new identity, attending charity galas, joining country clubs, creating a paper trail of wealth and connections. The Wharton MBA she claims, fake diploma purchased online, the third-generation Miami socialite background, complete fabrication. But how did she get close to David? I asked, though I was beginning to suspect the answer. She targeted him, Carlos said matter-of-factly. Look at this timeline. She started appearing at the same restaurants, the same business functions, the same social events as David 6 months before they officially met. She studied his habits, his preferences, his family dynamics. This wasn't a chance encounter, this was a hunting expedition. The photographs told the story clearly. Ashley at the marina where David kept his boat, chatting with the dockmaster. Ashley at the gym where David worked out, conveniently using the equipment next to his. Ashley at the business conference where David later claimed they'd met by accident, positioned perfectly to bump into him at the coffee station. She's a professional predator, I said, the words coming out as a whisper. Gets worse, Carlos said grimly. I found 2 other men in her past with similar profiles. Wealthy, married, with significant assets. Both died in accidents within 2 years of meeting her. The room fell silent. Maria's face had gone pale, and I felt like I couldn't breathe properly. Accidents. I managed to add. Boating accident in Las Vegas. Car crash in Phoenix. Both men had recently changed their life insurance beneficiaries and updated their wills. Both had been having marital problems. Both left everything to their new girlfriends. And Ashley was never investigated. Different name each time, different appearance, different background story. She's smart enough to change locations and identities, smart enough to make it look like coincidence. Carlos's expression was grim, but now we know her path. She finds wealthy, married men, seduces them, isolates them from their families, then arranges for convenient accidents that leave her as the beneficiary. I stared at the photographs, seeing my own future laid out in stark detail. How long do I have? Based on her previous timeline, I'd say you're in the final phase. She's already isolated David from you, she's integrated herself into his family and business, and she's positioning herself as the grieving girlfriend who deserves his inheritance. Carlos paused. The only question is, when and how she'll make her move. Maria slammed her hand down on the table. We have to go to the police. This is evidence of a serial killer. Circumstantial evidence, Carlos corrected. Suspicious, yes, but not enough for criminal charges. She's careful to maintain plausible deniability. The police would need concrete proof of her intent to harm Emma, or evidence linking her to the previous deaths. What about the recording she made? I asked. The threats she made against me. She's smart enough to claim it was taken out of context, that she was just warning you about the dangers of Miami, not threatening you directly. Carlos shook his head. She's done this before. She knows how to stay just on the legal side of the line until she's ready to strike. I felt trapped again, surrounded by evidence that proved Ashley's guilt but couldn't be used to stop her. So what do? We turn the tables, Carlos said, his mild expression sharpening. She's been hunting you, studying your habits, planning your elimination. Now we hunt. We study her patterns, document her actions, and we force her to make a mistake. How? By making her think her plan is working perfectly, while we gather the evidence we need to destroy her. Carlos pulled out a new folder. I've been monitoring her communications, tracking her movements, identifying her associates. She's not as invisible as she thinks she is. He spread out a series of photographs, showing Ashley at various locations around Miami. She meets with a man named Victor Restrepo twice a week at a coffee shop in Coconut Grove. Restrepo has connections to some very unpleasant people, who specialize in making problems disappear. You think he's her hitman? I think he's her contact for arranging accidents. Restrepo runs a boat repair business, but his real income comes from insurance fraud and witness intimidation. If Ashley needs someone to tamper with brakes or sabotage a boat engine, Restrepo would be her guy. The clinical way Carlos discussed my potential murder methods should have terrified me, but instead I felt a strange sense of relief. Finally, we had concrete evidence of Ashley's criminal intent. There's more, Carlos continued. I've been tracking her financial transactions. She's been receiving regular payments from an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. The account is registered to a shell company, but the timing of the payments matches perfectly with her previous victim's death benefits. She's been funded by her previous crimes, Maria said, understanding immediately. She's using the money from murdering those other men to finance her operation against Emma, which means she's confident this will work, I said, the pieces clicking together. She's invested too much money and time to walk away now. Carlos nodded approvingly. Exactly. Which gives us leverage. She's committed to this course of action, which means she'll be predictable. We can anticipate her moves and position ourselves accordingly. What's our next step? We give her exactly what she expects to see. You go back to your normal routine. Act like the oblivious wife who doesn't suspect anything. Meanwhile, we document everything she does, everyone she meets with, every plan she makes. The idea of pretending ignorance while knowing what Ashley was planning made my skin crawl. I don't know if I can do that. Face David every day. Act like nothing's wrong while knowing he's planning to kill me. You don't have to face David, Carlos said. According to your husband's calendar, which I've been monitoring, he's leaving for a business trip to Orlando tomorrow. He'll be gone for 3 days, meeting with potential investors for the new resort project. With Ashley? According to their text messages, yeah, which gives us the perfect opportunity to search your house and David's office without interference. Maria leaned forward. What are we looking for? The documents Emma signed last month, for starter. If they're what I think they are, they'll be the key to understanding how Ashley plans to claim the inheritance. We also need to find any evidence of David's direct involvement in the plot. You think David might not know about the murder plan? Carlos shrugged. Hard to say. He might think Ashley is just planning to divorce you and claim half the assets. He might not realize she's planning to kill you and take everything. Or he might be fully complicit. Either way, we need to know. The thought that David might be genuinely unaware of Ashley's homicidal intentions gave me a flicker of hope. Maybe my husband was just a cheating bastard, not a would-be murderer. Maybe there was still a chance to save our marriage, to warn him about what Ashley really was. Don't, Maria said, reading my expression. Don't start making excuses for him. Even if he doesn't know about the murder plan, he's still betraying you, still planning to divorce you and steal your assets. She was right, but the hope was hard to extinguish completely. 8 years of marriage, 8 years of love and trust and shared dreams, couldn't be erased overnight. We'll find out tomorrow, Carlos said, gathering his documents. But Emma, you need to be prepared for the possibility that David is fully involved. The evidence suggests Ashley doesn't work alone. She needs inside information, access to personal documents, cooperation from her targets. David might be more complicit than you want to believe. That night, I lay awake in Maria's guest room, staring at the ceiling and trying to process everything I'd learned. Ashley Martinez, professional killer, had spent months crafting the perfect identity to seduce my husband and claim my fortune. She'd done this before, successfully, and she was confident enough to invest her previous profits in eliminating me. The woman I'd confronted at the restaurant hadn't been David's mistress making idle threats. She'd been a predator explaining her hunting strategy to her intended prey. The casual way she'd discussed my death wasn't bravado or intimidation. It was professional confidence, based on experience. My phone buzzed with a text from David. Flight delayed, but should be in Orlando by midnight. Miss you. Love you. I stared at the message, wondering if there was any genuine feeling behind those words, or if they were just part of the performance. Was David missing me, or was he anticipating the moment when Ashley would make her move? Did he love me, or was he just maintaining the facade until I was no longer useful? I typed back, safe travels. Love you too. The lie felt bitter on my tongue. But Carlos was right. I needed to maintain the pretense until we had enough evidence to act. Ashley was expecting a helpless victim, not a woman with allies and resources and a plan of her own. The next morning, I drove to the house in Coral Gables for the first time since that horrible night at the restaurant. The place felt different now, contaminated by the knowledge of David's betrayal. Every room held memories of our life together, but now I wondered how much of it had been real. Carlos met me at the front door, along with Jessica and a woman I didn't recognize. This is Detective Sarah Chen with Miami-Dade Police, Jessica explained. She's off duty today, but she's agreed to witness our search and document anything we find. No relation to your husband's family, Detective Chen assured me, seeing my expression. I know this is difficult, but we need to make sure any evidence we gather will be admissible in court. David's home office was exactly as he'd left it, neat, and organized with files arranged alphabetically. It took us less than an hour to find what we were looking for. "Here," Carlos said, pulling out a folder labeled Estate Planning Updates. Inside were the documents I'd signed the previous month, along with several others I'd never seen before. Jessica reviewed them quickly, her expression growing darker with each page. "Emma, this is bad, really bad." "What did I sign?" "You signed away your rights to contest any changes to David's will. You also signed a document agreeing to a revision of your prenup that gives David access to your trust fund in the event of your death. And you signed a power of attorney, giving David control over your assets if you're declared mentally incompetent." The room spun around me. I didn't know what I was signing. "David said they were routine tax documents." "I believe you," Jessica said grimly. "But legally, your signature is your signature. These documents would hold up in court, especially if there's evidence of your mental state deteriorating before your death." "What kind of evidence?" Carlos opened another folder, this one containing medical records and psychiatric evaluation. "According to these documents, you've been seeing a psychiatrist for depression and anxiety. You've been prescribed medication for panic attacks and suicidal ideation. You've been exhibiting erratic behavior and paranoid delusion." "None of that is true," I said, though my voice came out as a whisper. "I know, but Ashley's been building a paper trail. She's created a fictional medical history that would support the narrative of an unstable woman who couldn't handle losing her husband to a younger, more successful woman." Detective Chen looked up from the documents she'd been photographing. "This is sophisticated fraud. Someone with legal training put this together." "Ashley's smart, but she's not a lawyer," Carlos said. "She's working with someone who understands the legal system." "I have a theory," Jessica said, her voice tight with anger, "but I need to make some calls to confirm it." While Jessica stepped outside to make her calls, Carlos and I continued searching David's office. In the bottom drawer of his desk, we found a cell phone I'd never seen before. Carlos powered it on and scrolled through the messages. "Burner phone," he said, "used exclusively for communication with Ashley." He showed me the screen. "Look at this." The messages were cold and clinical, discussing logistics and timeline. David asking about the Kilmarnock-Orlando meeting, and whether the problem would be resolved by next week. Ashley confirming that arrangements were being finalized, and that the timeline was still on track. "They're talking about my murder," I said, the words coming out flat and emotionless. "It looks that way, but Emma, look at the dates. These messages go back 6 months. David's been planning this from the beginning." The last flicker of hope I'd been holding onto died. My husband wasn't an innocent man seduced by a beautiful woman. He was a co-conspirator in a plan to murder me and steal my inheritance. Jessica returned, her expression thunderous. "I know who's been helping Ashley with the legal documents. Thomas Wright, your family's lawyer. He's been taking payments from the same offshore account that's been funding Ashley's operation." "Thomas?" I couldn't hide my shock. "He's been our lawyer for 10 years. He helped my father set up the trust fund." "Which means he knows exactly how to circumvent the protections your father put in place," Jessica said. "He's been selling you out, Emma. Your entire legal team has been compromised." The betrayal felt overwhelming. David, Ashley, Thomas, all working together to destroy me and claim my fortune. How many other people in my life were part of the conspiracy? "We need to get you out of here," Detective Chen said suddenly. "If they're monitoring this house, they'll know we've been here. That could accelerate their timeline." As we gathered the evidence and prepared to leave, I took one last look around David's office. This room had been his sanctuary, the place where he'd planned his business deals and dreamed about our future together. Now I knew it was also where he'd planned my murder. "Emma," Carlos said gently, "we have what we need. It's time to go." I nodded, following them out of the house and into the Miami sunshine. But as we drove away, I wasn't thinking about escape or safety, I was thinking about justice. Ashley Martinez thought she was hunting helpless prey. David thought he was eliminating an inconvenient wife. Thomas thought he was facilitating a simple estate transfer. They were all about to learn that they'd made a fatal error in judgment. They'd assumed I was weak, isolated, and defenseless. They'd underestimated not just my resources, but my determination to fight back. The hunt was about to begin, but I was no longer the prey. I was the predator, and I was going to destroy everyone who'd tried to destroy me. The Miami Herald's morning edition landed on my temporary doorstep, with a thud that seemed to echo through the entire city. The headline screamed across the front page in bold black letters, "Prominent Miami lawyer arrested in multi-million-dollar fraud scheme." Below it, Thomas Wright's mugshot stared back at me, his usually immaculate appearance disheveled and defeated. Jessica had moved quickly after our discovery at David's house. Within 48 hours, she'd presented Detective Chen with enough evidence to obtain search warrants for Thomas Wright's office and financial records. What they'd found exceeded even our worst expectations. He's been running a sophisticated inheritance fraud operation for over 5 years, Detective Chen explained as she sat across from me in Jessica's conference room. Ashley Martinez was just his latest partner. Together, they've stolen approximately $15 million from at least 8 families. I set down my coffee cup with shaking hands. 8 families? The pattern was always the same. Ashley would target wealthy married men, seduce them, isolate them from their spouses, then arrange for convenient accidents. Wright would handle the legal paperwork ensuring the assets transferred smoothly to Ashley's various identities. They'd split the proceeds 50-50. Jessica leaned forward, her expression grim. The good news is that Wright's arrest has panic-stricken Ashley. She's been trying to contact him all morning, and when she couldn't reach him, she started making mistakes. What kind of mistake? She tried to access her Cayman Islands account electronically. We've been monitoring her communications since yesterday, so we have a record of her attempting to move money. She also called Victor Resterto 6 times in the past hour, each call more frantic than the last. Detective Chen pulled out her phone and showed me a series of text messages. These are from Ashley to an unknown number. Look at the progression. The messages told a story of growing desperation. The first was calm and professional. Minor complication with legal arrangement. May need to adjust timeline. The second showed concern, cannot reach primary contact. Need immediate guidance. The third revealed panic. Situation deteriorating rapidly. May need to abort and relocate. She's running scared, I observed. Yes, but that makes her more dangerous, not less. Detective Chen warned. Cornered predators tend to lash out. She might decide to accelerate her timeline and attempt to eliminate you immediately, rather than wait for the perfect opportunity. The thought sent a chill through me, but it also sparked something else. Good. Let her panic. Let her make more mistakes. Jessica looked at me with concern. Emma, I know you're angry, but we need to be smart about this. Ashley is still free. David doesn't know we're onto him, and we don't have enough evidence to arrest Ashley for the murders she's committed in other states. What do we need? We need her to make a move against you while we're watching. We need concrete evidence of attempted murder, not just conspiracy and fraud. The idea should have terrified me, but instead I felt a cold determination settling over me. So we give her an opportunity? Absolutely not, Detective Chen said immediately. We're not using you as bait. It's too dangerous. It's my life they're planning to destroy, I said firmly. It's my decision how to protect it. Maria, who had been silent throughout the meeting, finally spoke up. What if we could control the situation? Set up a scenario where Ashley thinks she has the perfect opportunity, but we're actually in complete control. Jessica and Detective Chen exchanged glances. What are you thinking? Jessica asked. David comes back from Orlando tonight, Maria said. According to his calendar, he's supposed to take Emma out to dinner tomorrow night to celebrate the success of his business trip. Perfect romantic evening, private restaurant, quiet drive home along the causeway. You think Ashley will try something then? I think she's desperate enough to try something soon, and a romantic dinner gives her the perfect cover story. The grieving girlfriend who tried to warn the unstable wife about the dangers of driving when upset. Detective Chen was shaking her head. Too many variables. Too many things that could go wrong. Not if we control every variable, I said, the plan taking shape in my mind. Not if we choose the restaurant, control the route, monitor every step of the evening. Emma, you're talking about deliberately walking into a murder attempt. I'm talking about forcing Ashley to reveal her hand while we have every advantage. I turned to Detective Chen. How long would you need to set up surveillance, to position backup, to ensure that when Ashley makes her move, you're there to stop her and arrest her? Detective Chen was quiet for a long moment, clearly weighing the risks and benefits. If we were going to attempt something like this, and I'm not saying we should, we'd need at least 24 hours to coordinate with the FBI. Ashley's crimes cross state lines, so this would be a federal case. Perfect. That gives us time to plan everything perfectly. Jessica still looked skeptical. What about David? He'll be expecting a normal evening with his wife, not a sting operation. David won't know the difference, I said, surprising myself with how calm I sounded. I'm going to give him exactly what he expects, a loving wife who's excited about his business success and looking forward to a romantic evening together. You think you can act normal around him, knowing what we know? I thought about the question serious. Could I sit across from my husband at dinner, smile and laugh, and pretend to be in love, while knowing he was planning to murder me? Could I play the role of the trusting wife, while federal agents watched from the shadows? Yes, I said finally, because it's not really acting anymore. David wants Emma Rodriguez Chen, the naive wife who trusts him completely. That woman is dead. I'm Emma Rodriguez now, and Emma Rodriguez is going to destroy everyone who tried to destroy her. The next 24 hours passed in a blur of careful planning and meticulous preparation. Detective Chen coordinated with FBI agent Patricia Vamos, who had been tracking Ashley Martinez's crimes across multiple states. The federal investigation had been stalled by Ashley's identity changes and careful evidence elimination, but our evidence gave them the breakthrough they'd been waiting for. We've identified Ashley Martinez as a person of interest in 11 suspicious deaths over the past 7 years, Agent Vamos explained during our briefing, but she's always managed to stay just ahead of the evidence. This is our chance to catch her in the act. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. David and I would have dinner at Giralda, a romantic restaurant in Coral Gables that David had suggested when I'd told him I wanted to celebrate his business success. The restaurant had agreed to cooperate, placing federal agents at nearby tables and installing additional security cameras. After dinner, we would drive home along the scenic route through Coconut Grove, a winding road that followed the coastline and provided multiple opportunities for an accident to occur. Federal agents would follow at a distance, close enough to intervene but far enough away to avoid detection. The most likely scenario is that Ashley will tamper with your car while you're at dinner, Agent Vamos explained. Brake failure, steering malfunction, something that would cause an accident on the curves along the bay, and if she tries something more direct, then we'll be ready. But Emma, I want you to understand that once we start this operation, you'll be in real danger. Ashley Martinez is a professional killer. She's smart, she's experienced, and she's desperate. I nodded, feeling strangely calm about the prospect of facing my would-be murderer. I understand. David returned from Orlando that evening with flowers and expensive champagne, his face glowing with excitement about the new investors he'd secured for the resort project. He seemed genuinely happy to see me, wrapping me in his arms and spinning me around the kitchen of our temporary safe house. I missed you so much, he said, burying his face in my hair. The trip was successful, but it wasn't the same without you there to share it with me. For a moment I almost forgot what I knew about him. This was the David I'd fallen in love with 8 years ago, enthusiastic and affectionate and seemingly devoted to our marriage. But then I remembered the burner phone, the secret messages, the months of planning my death, and my heart turned to ice. I missed you too, I lied smooth. Tell me everything about the meetings. David launched into an animated description of his presentations, his meetings with potential investors, his vision for transforming Miami's luxury hospitality industry. He was passionate and charismatic, the same qualities that had attracted me to him initially.
But now I could see the calculation behind his charm, the way he was crafting a narrative that would explain his sudden wealth after my convenient death. The investors are particularly excited about the technology integration aspect, he said, pouring us each a glass of champagne. They think combining traditional luxury hospitality with cutting-edge digital management systems could revolutionize the industry. That sounds like something Ashley would have contributed to, I said carefully, watching his reaction. David's face flickered for just a moment, but he recovered quickly. Ashley's been incredibly helpful with the business development side. She has connections throughout the industry that have opened doors I never could have accessed alone. She's very impressive, I agree. Beautiful, intelligent, well-connected. You're lucky to have her on your team. We're both lucky, David said, raising his glass, to partnerships that change everything. I clinked my glass against his, wondering if he realized the double meaning of his words, to getting what we deserve. The next evening arrived with typical Miami drama. Storm clouds gathered over the bay as David and I prepared for our dinner at Geralda. I chose a red dress that Ashley would never be caught dead wearing, something that screamed suburban housewife rather than sophisticated socialite. I wanted to look exactly like the victim Ashley expected me to be. "You look beautiful," David said as we got into his Mercedes. He'd insisted on driving, claiming he wanted the evening to be perfect. I wondered if he knew about Ashley's plans, or if he thought this would be just another romantic dinner before filing for divorce. The federal surveillance team was invisible but omnipresent. Agent Vamos had assured me they were positioned throughout the route to the restaurant and that Ashley's every movement was being monitored. If she made any attempt to tamper with our car or approach us directly, they would be ready. Geralda was everything David had promised, an intimate restaurant with dim lighting and secluded tables overlooking a small courtyard garden. David had reserved a corner table that provided privacy and romance, perfect for a husband's last meal with his doomed wife. "This is perfect," I said as we settled into our seats. "Just like our anniversary dinner last year." David smiled, but something flickered in his eyes. "Let's focus on the future instead of the past. I have a feeling the next year is going to be very different for both of us." Throughout dinner, David was the perfect attentive husband, asking about my work, sharing funny stories from his trip, discussing plans for a vacation we would never take together. If I hadn't known about his betrayal, I would have thought we were having one of the best evenings of our marriage. But I did know, and every smile felt like a knife in my chest. This man I had loved, trusted, and supported for 8 years was sitting across from me planning my death while pretending to love me. The performance was flawless, which somehow made it even more heartbreaking. "Emma," David said as we finished our dessert, "I need to tell you something." My heart stopped. Was he about to confess, about Ashley, about the divorce plans, about the murder plot? "I've been thinking about our future together," he continued, reaching across the table to take my hand. "About the kind of life we want to build, the legacy we want to leave." "What kind of legacy?" I asked, my voice surprisingly steady. "I want us to be remembered as the couple who transformed Miami's skyline, who created something beautiful and lasting together." His thumb stroked across my knuckles, a gesture that had always made me feel safe and loved. "I want to build an empire with you, Emma, a real partnership." The irony was staggering. David was declaring his love and commitment while planning my murder, perhaps within the next few hours. Either he was the most accomplished liar I'd ever met, or he was genuinely delusional about what he was doing. "That sounds wonderful," I said, squeezing his hand. "I can't wait to see what we build together." As we left the restaurant, I felt the weight of federal surveillance around us like an invisible shield. Somewhere in the darkness, Ashley Martinez was preparing to strike. Somewhere in the shadows, Victor Restro was waiting with whatever weapon or method they'd chosen for my elimination. But they were hunting a woman who no longer existed. Emma Rodriguez Chen, the trusting wife, had died the moment Ashley revealed her plans. Emma Rodriguez, the woman who had inherited more than money from her father, was walking into their trap with eyes wide open. David helped me into the passenger seat of his Mercedes, still playing the role of the devoted husband. As he started the engine and pulled out of the restaurant parking lot, I wondered if this would be the last car ride of my life. If Ashley's plan worked, David would be a grieving widower by morning, free to marry his beautiful girlfriend and enjoy my inheritance. If our plan worked, Ashley would be in federal custody, and David would discover that his wife was far more dangerous than he'd ever imagined. As we turned onto the coastal road that wound through Coconut Grove, I settled back in my seat and smiled. Let Ashley come. Let her try to eliminate yesterday's trap. She was about to learn that some garbage is toxic when you try to dispose of it, and handling it carelessly can destroy everything you've worked to build. The first sign something was wrong came as we rounded the curve near the marina. David's hands tightened on the steering wheel, and I heard him curse under his breath. The car was pulling to the right, fighting his attempts to keep us on the road. "The steering feels strange," he said, genuine concern creeping into his voice. "Something's not right." Through my earpiece I heard Agent Vamos's voice crackle to life. "Visual on the target vehicle. Suspect appears to be experiencing mechanical difficulties. All units, maintain positions but be ready to move." I gripped the door handle as David struggled to control the Mercedes. Either Ashley had sabotaged our car as expected, or we were experiencing the world's most inconvenient coincidence. Given Ashley's track record, I was betting on sabotage. "Pull over," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "Let's call for help." "No, I can handle this," David replied, his knuckles white as he fought the steering wheel. "It's probably just a tire issue. We're almost home." But we weren't almost home, and the car was becoming increasingly difficult to control. The scenic coastal road that had seemed so romantic during our drive to dinner now felt like a death trap, with sharp curves and steep drops into Biscayne Bay on our right. "David, please," I said, letting genuine fear creep into my voice. "I'm scared." He glanced at me, and for a moment I saw something that might have been real regret in his eyes. "It's going to be okay, Emma. I promise." The car lurched violently to the right as the front tire suddenly gave way completely. David yanked the wheel hard to the left, overcorrecting, and we spun across the center line into oncoming traffic. A pickup truck swerved to avoid us, its horn blaring as we careened toward the guardrail that separated the road from the rocky shoreline below. Time seemed to slow as I realized this was it. This was the moment Ashley had planned so carefully, the convenient accident that would leave David a grieving widower and Ashley free to console him while inheriting my fortune. Except David wasn't acting like a man who was expecting his wife to die. He was fighting desperately to save us both, his face twisted with effort and terror as he battled to regain control of the vehicle. The Mercedes slammed into the guardrail with a grinding shriek of metal on metal. The impact threw me against the passenger door, and I felt the car teetering on the edge of the embankment, balanced precariously between the road and a 20-foot drop into the rocky bay below. "Don't move," David whispered, his voice tight with panic. "The car's not stable. Any sudden movement could send us over." Through the windshield, I could see federal agents emerging from unmarked vehicles, moving quickly but carefully toward our position. Agent Vamos was speaking rapidly into her radio, coordinating what looked like a rescue operation rather than an arrest. "David," I said quietly, "I need you to listen to me very carefully. This wasn't an accident." "What are you talking about?" He was still gripping the steering wheel, as if that could somehow stabilize our precarious position. "Ashley sabotaged our car. She's been planning to kill me and frame it as an accident so you could inherit my money." David's face went pale. "That's impossible. Ashley would never. She loves me." "Ashley Martinez is a professional killer," I said, watching his expression shift from denial to confusion to dawning horror. "Her real name isn't even Ashley Brooks. She's murdered at least 3 other men exactly like this, after seducing them and convincing them to leave their wives." "You're in shock," David said, but his voice lacked conviction. "You're not thinking clearly. Check your phone," I said. "The burner phone you've been using to communicate with her. Check the messages from tonight." With one hand still on the wheel, David reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out the phone I'd seen in his office. His face went ashen as he scrolled through the messages. "She says the problem is being resolved tonight," he whispered. "She says after the accident, we can finally be together without complications." "Did you know?" I asked, studying his face carefully. "Did you know she was planning to kill me?" "No," he said immediately, then stopped, doubt creeping into his voice. "I mean, she said there might be an accident. She said Miami was dangerous for someone who wasn't careful, but I thought she was trying to scare you into leaving voluntarily." The car shifted slightly, and we both froze. Through the cracked windshield, I could see Agent Vamos coordinating with what looked like a rescue team, preparing to stabilize our vehicle and extract us safely. "David," I said carefully, "I know about the documents I signed. I know about the changes to your will. I know about Thomas Wright and the offshore accounts." David's shoulders slumped in defeat. "How long have you known?" "Since the night you excluded me from the family dinner. The night Ashley told me I was yesterday's trash, and she was going to inherit my fortune after arranging my convenient death. She actually said that? David looked genuinely shocked. She told you she was going to kill you. She threatened me direct. She recorded our conversation to use as evidence of my unstable mental state. She's been building a case for months that would make my death look like suicide or accident caused by a jealous, paranoid wife. David was quiet for a long moment, processing the full scope of Ashley's manipulation. I loved you, he said finally. I want you to know that. Whatever I did, however I got caught up in this, I did love you. But you were willing to divorce me and take my money. I was angry, he said defensively. Angry that your family's wealth overshadowed everything I accomplished. Angry that people saw me as the husband who married into money rather than a successful businessman in my own right. Ashley understood that anger. She made me feel like I deserved more, so you decided to steal my inheritance. I decided to claim what I felt I'd earned by supporting you and your family's interests for 8 years. David's voice grew stronger, more self-righteous. Do you know what it's like to live in the shadow of dead man's money? To have people assume every success is built on your wife's trust fund? I stared at him, finally understanding the resentment that had been eating away at our marriage for years. So you thought you'd eliminate the shadow by eliminating me. I thought Ashley was going to convince you to leave, to relocate somewhere else, and start fresh, while I rebuilt my life without the constant reminder of your family's legacy. You really believed she would let me live? David was quiet, and in that silence I had my answer. Some part of him had known what Ashley was planning. Maybe he'd chosen not to examine that knowledge too closely, but he'd known. Mrs. Chen? Agent Vamos's voice came through a bullhorn from the road. We're going to stabilize your vehicle and get you out of there. Please remain as still as possible. Over the next 20 minutes, I watched federal agents and Miami rescue workers coordinate a careful extraction operation. They secured the car with cables and pulleys, ensuring it couldn't slide further down the embankment, then carefully removed first me, and then David, through the passenger side door. As my feet touched solid ground, I saw Ashley Martinez being led to a federal van in handcuffs. Even in custody, she was stunning, her blonde hair perfectly styled and her expression coolly defiant. She looked like a woman who'd been temporarily inconvenienced, not a serial killer whose elaborate plan had just collapsed. Emma Rodriguez? Agent Vamos approached me as paramedics checked for injuries. Are you hurt? I'm fine, I said, though my hands were shaking from adrenaline. Did you get everything you need? More than enough. Ashley Martinez is being charged with attempted murder, conspiracy to commit murder, wire fraud, identity theft, and about 6 other federal crimes. We also arrested Victor Restrepo, who confessed to tampering with your vehicle in exchange for $20,000. What about Dave? Agent Vamos glanced toward my husband, who was being questioned by another agent near the road. That's complicated. He's certainly guilty of fraud and conspiracy, but his level of involvement in the murder plot is unclear. He might have genuinely believed Ashley was planning something less permanent. He knew, I said quietly. Maybe he didn't want to admit it to himself, but he knew. That will be for a jury to decide. But Emma, I want you to know that your courage tonight probably saved lives. Ashley Martinez would have continued killing until someone stopped her. As dawn broke over Miami, I found myself sitting in Jessica's office, once again, this time as a successful survivor rather than a potential victim. The morning news was already covering the arrest of the Black Widow of Miami, as they'd dubbed Ashley Martinez. Her photo was splashed across every local channel, along with photos of her previous victims and details of her sophisticated fraud operation. The federal prosecutor wants to discuss a plea agreement with David, Jessica explained as she poured coffee. His cooperation in the case against Ashley could result in reduced charges. What kind of charges is he facing? Wire fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud, potentially accessory to attempted murder if they can prove he knew about Ashley's plans. Jessica paused. It's possible he could serve 5 to 10 years, depending on his level of cooperation. I thought about David, the man I'd loved and married and trusted completely, the man who'd been willing to steal my inheritance and possibly allow my murder to feed his own ego and resent. I want him to face the full consequences of his choices, I said finally. No plea agreements, no reduced charges. He made his decision when he chose Ashley over me. Are you sure? He could provide valuable testimony against Ashley. Ashley's going down with or without David's help. You have recordings, financial records, physical evidence, and testimony from her other victims' families. David's cooperation won't make or break that case. Jessica nodded approvingly. What about the divorce? I want it finalized as quickly as possible. David can keep whatever assets he brought to the marriage, but I want my inheritance protected, and any claim he might have had to it revoked. That shouldn't be difficult given the circumstances. What about the house? I thought about the Coral Gables mansion that had been our dream home. Now it felt contaminated by David's betrayal, filled with memories of lies and deception. Sell it. Donate the proceeds to victims of domestic violence. I paused. I'm thinking about relocating anyway. Miami holds too many painful memories now. Where will you go? I'm not sure yet. Somewhere I can start fresh, build something new. I smiled for the first time in days. Maybe I'll follow my father's example and start a technology company. Use my inheritance to create something meaningful instead of just living off. 3 months later, I stood in the conference room of my new company, looking out at the San Francisco Bay. Rodriguez Technologies was still small, just 6 employees working on innovative software solutions for small businesses, but it was mine. Built with my money, my vision, my determination to create something positive from the wreckage of my old life. Ashley Martinez had been sentenced to life in prison without parole after pleading guilty to 3 counts of murder and numerous fraud charges. David had received 8 years in federal prison after being convicted on all charges. Thomas Wright had been disbarred and sentenced to 12 years for his role in the inheritance fraud scheme. The media attention had been intense, but I'd given one interview to the Miami Herald telling my story in my own words, then disappeared from public view to rebuild my life in private. My phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. Maria's name appeared on the screen. How's the tech mogul life treating you? She asked when I answered. Better than the trophy wife life, I replied with a laugh. How's the restaurant business? Booming. Turns out surviving a murder plot makes for great publicity. I've got investors interested in expanding to other cities. Good for you, you deserve success. We both do, Emma. We both survived something that was designed to destroy us. I thought about that as we talked. Ashley had called me yesterday's trash, dismissed me as something to be discarded and forgotten, but I hadn't been destroyed. I'd been refined, purified, made stronger by the fire of betrayal and attempted murder. My father had built his empire by turning challenges into opportunities, by refusing to let setbacks define his future. I was doing the same thing now, using the skills and determination I'd inherited from him, to build something meaningful from the ashes of my old life. After I hung up with Maria, I returned to my work, reviewing proposals from potential clients, and planning our expansion strategy. Outside my window, the sun was setting over the bay, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and gold. I was no longer Emma Rodriguez Chen, the neglected wife living in her father's shadow. I was Emma Rodriguez, entrepreneur and survivor, building her own legacy one decision at a time. Ashley Martinez had tried to eliminate me and claim my fortune. Instead, she'd freed me from a life that was slowly suffocating me, freed me to become the woman I was always meant to be. Some people's trash really is another person's treasure. But in this case, the treasure had been my own strength, my own resilience, my own refusal to be discarded by people who didn't understand my worth. The game was over, and I had won. Not just the battle for my life and my inheritance, but the war for my identity and my future. And that victory was sweeter than any revenge could ever be. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.